Alrighty, what's up guys? It's Rascal here as always, and today we are doing something a little different. This is going to be a much longer video than usual, and it's also not specifically Fortnite related. Today I'm bringing you the most in-depth guide I could possibly give on aiming in any FPS game, third-person shooter game, really just any game that requires aiming. Keep in mind though, these tips only work for keyboard and mouse. And before we get into this, be sure to hit the like buttons because I spent a lot of time on this video, so it would really mean a lot. So this video is going to be divided into 7 different chapters with timestamps in the description for each chapter. Our first chapter is going to be how to hold your mouse plus how to aim properly. Our second chapter is going to be choosing the right sensitivity. Our third chapter is going to be understanding different categories of aiming. Our fourth chapter is putting together a plan for your own aiming needs. Our fifth chapter is going to be using Kovaaks, which is my personal favorite aim trainer. Our sixth chapter is going to be understanding what different courses are trying to teach you. And our seventh one is putting a plan together to continue improving. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get on to our first topic, which will be mouse grip. So there are 3 main different mouse grips. So before we go into actually which grip you should be using, I'm going to go ahead and roll a quick clip from Shroud on what his opinions are.
Okay, see? This is how I hold it. I can't go any further. This is about all I can do. Ooh, ooh. Oh, this way. Wait. Turn my arm. Okay. Can you tell? You probably can't tell. No, you can't. I can't show you how to grip your mouse. Just pick it up, hold it, and that's how you hold your mouse. Whatever feels natural.
So as you can see, Shroud just said, pick up a mouse, however you hold it, that is the best thing for you because it feels natural and it's comfortable. There's no wrong way to hold a mouse, but there are a couple of benefits to holding it certain ways over others. So as I said, there's 3 main categories: palm, claw, and fingertip. So let's figure out which one you use. Alright, so our first grip is going to be palm. Your palm grip is going to be where your hand is completely on your mouse. No part of your hand is really off the mouse, but keep in mind you do need a larger mouse for this. Where you would want to use palm grip is in a game like Valorant or CS-GO, which require little tracking. Alright, our second grip is claw grip. So this is going to be when you have your fingertips on the mouse and a little bit of pressure from your upper palm. This is what I personally use. It feels pretty natural to me, and it really excels for games that require a good bit of tracking, a good bit of flicking, and a good bit of precise aim. So pretty much any FPS game, Fortnite, Warzone, you can even use it for Valorant, CSGO. Once again, remember, you can use these grips for any game you want. And our third grip is fingertip. So this is for just your fingertips being on the mouse. It is very good for flicking, but very hard to learn to do other things with. It has many benefits, but also some disadvantages as well for tracking, precision, all that. Personally, I use a combination of fingertip and claw when I play Fortnite. When I'm actually shooting someone, I'll switch to claw, but when I'm doing like editing and building, I'll actually move my hand into a fingertip position because it allows for a little bit faster movement and better flicks. Alright, so now how are you supposed to aim with your mouse? You're gonna go ahead and hold your mouse however you want, and then you're going to have a pressure point somewhere on your arm. Be sure this pressure point isn't on your wrist, and I'll actually roll another clip by Shroud on that.
How can you...
Fuck, Shroud's like one of my best
How
friends.
can you hold onto your mouse and not touch your mouse pad? That's just not possible. You have to touch your mouse pad unless you're doing like a hover hand and you're kind of like holding onto it like this, or you're playing like this. If you play like this, by the way, stop. Okay, if you play this is the corner right here. This is your desk, and if you play like this, get off that right now. Don't play like that. I know some people that play like that. It is not good. That is not a good way to play, dude. Your wrist is gonna get owned. And I know people that have done that for a long time. Dude, don't do that. That's bad. Very bad.
So what Shroud is saying here is it's not going to necessarily make you worse to play with the pressure point being on your wrist, playing kind of like this. It'll actually cause injuries, which could completely end your gaming career. So go ahead, put your pressure point somewhere on your forearm. I personally have mine like maybe 4 or 5 inches away from my wrist, and then just have it somewhere where you're easily able to slide around. And then another thing that I don't think is really talked about enough is it's not so much just moving your mouse around. There's a little more to it than that. From what I've personally learned, I feel it's best to almost try and just glide your mouse across the top of the surface. And I know that seems kind of obvious, but really what I see a lot of people do is they put a lot of pressure down on their mouse, which can cause some really inconsistent movements with your mouse. Like potentially you don't have a very good mouse pad and you don't have very good mouse grips or something. It can actually catch on the surface that you're sliding on. So whether or not you notice that happening, just try to really just barely glide your mouse over the top of the surface. So quick recap of this chapter: know which mouse grip you're using, know the pros and cons, don't play like this, play with a good pressure point somewhere on your forearm, and then also be sure to just glide your mouse across, don't push down on the surface. Alright, now for chapter 2. Choose the right sensitivity for your game. For this section, we're going to be using a term called EDPI. The equation for EDPI is going to be your in-game sensitivity, whether that's a percent or a number, multiplied by your DPI on your mouse. So let's say maybe you run 400 DPI at 2 sensitivity. That's going to mean you're on 800 EDPI for whatever game that is. But if it's a percentage for EDPI, such as maybe you run on 50% on Fortnite, because I know Fortnite uses percentages. If your DPI were to be 400, it would be a 200 EDPI. And if your sensitivity was 800, then 50% of 800 is 400 DPI. Now, once again, there is a lot of freedom when choosing the right sensitivity, and I say there's not really a best sensitivity, but there are guidelines. Your sensitivity is going to be as good as the amount of time you put into training it. So here are the basic guidelines, kind of general area you might want to keep your sensitivity in, but there are plenty of exceptions within the professional community. So for Fortnite, it's kind of a weird game since there's the building mechanic and the editing mechanic, which is something not seen in any other shooter games. So there's actually 2 different categories of sensitivity that people use. This is low sensitivity and high sensitivity. And you need to understand the benefits of both of those. If you run on low sensitivity, your AR tracking, SMG spray, shotgun is going to be overall better than someone who ran on high sense, just because you will be so much more controlled. If you're to run on high sense, your building and editing is going to be a lot easier, plus your flicks will also excel over a low sense player because you're not having to move your mouse as far. Do keep in mind though, your AR aim and SMG aim is going to be a lot less controlled. So you kind of have to decide what's the best for you, and there's plenty of examples of high sense and low sense players within the professional community. For example, Benji Fishy and Mr. Savage, they run at high sense, while Booga and Zexro, Zate, a ton of other pros run at low sense. But really, it just goes to show that you can be good on either sensitivity. So for Fortnite, I would suggest if you're going to be running low sense, somewhere around 45 to 65 EDPI. That's a very wide range for you to work with, and you can even go a little bit out of it if you want, but try and keep it somewhere around there, especially if you're just now learning. And if you're going to be running high sense on Fortnite, go somewhere between 90 and 115 EDPI on Fortnite. Next up for Warzone. Theirs is a little different because they use a numerical sensitivity system rather than percentage. So the normal EDPI for that game is going to be around 3,000 to 3,600. That'll keep you in a good controlled area, give you plenty of freedom to test out different sensitivities and all that. And from what I've heard, you want to keep your ADS sensitivity about the same, if not the same as your hipfire sensitivity. And for Valorant, you want to run somewhere between 200 and 400 EDPI. There are plenty of exceptions like this, such as Hiko. He's really big in the Valorant community. So Hiko's EDPI is actually 576 in Valorant, which is a little bit higher than I would recommend for you guys starting out. But if you're really experienced with keyboard and mouse aiming, or you just really want to grind to get good with such a high sensitivity in such a precise game, go ahead, be my guest. Once again, guys, your aim is going to be just as good as the amount of time you put into it. These are just guidelines for you guys who are just now learning. Alright, now that we got EDPI out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the next chapter. So our next chapter is going to be different categories for aiming. Let's start off with flick. A flick is your ability to get your crosshair quickly on your opponent. That's a pretty simple definition there. So it's basically just maybe your opponent's here and your crosshair's here and you gotta flick your crosshair onto your opponent. Next up, we have tracking. This is the ability to keep your crosshair on your opponent and track them across the screen. Basically, you're just keeping your crosshair on your opponent and following them across the screen until you get the elimination. And lastly, we have precision. This is the ability to accurately hit your opponent, normally on the first shot from a far distance away. So now let's go ahead and define which areas you need to focus on for specific games. These 3 games I'm going to give examples of are Fortnite, Warzone, and Valorant. 3 pretty different diverse games. So let's say maybe you're doing Overwatch or something, you can probably apply the same principles as Warzone, And CSGO, you can apply the same principles as Valorant. Fortnite, I always like to give it a little bit of an exception because of that building mechanic. It's just not really relatable with any other game. For the flicking category, Fortnite is going to be the game that requires the most flicking out of any game probably out there on the market. The reason for this is once again because of editing. A lot of times when you make an edit, your crosshair won't be on your opponent, and with most fights being in such close proximity due to building and editing allowing you to get really close to your opponent, flicking is a must with shotguns. Next up we have Warzone. In Warzone, it's important to flick, but it's not the most important thing you can focus on. And once again, same for Valorant, it is important to know how to flick in Valorant, but it really depends on what weapon you're using. For example, maybe you use a Phantom or a Vandal, and it's not going to be quite as important to learn flicks, but maybe if you're using an operator, you will need to learn to flick a lot. Alright, next up, we have tracking. So in Fortnite, I would say it is important to know how to track. Tracking is not going to be the most important thing for you to do, but it can definitely help give you an advantage for those close range fights I was talking about earlier. Being able to maybe quickly tag someone for a couple headshots before you go in for the kill can definitely help a lot, because not only does it allow you to pressure your opponent a lot more, but it also gives you a clear health advantage. In Warzone, I would say this is the #1 thing you need to focus on. It is extremely important to know how to track someone in Warzone. Because it's such a fast-paced game and people don't die very quickly due to them having maybe a lot of armor plates or something, and there not being many one-shot kill weapons, you really have to rely on tracking and keeping your crosshair on your opponent for a couple seconds. The more you're able to track your opponent, the quicker you're able to kill them. And now for Valorant, it's not really that important to learn tracking. It's just not something you do in Valorant. I mean, most weapons eliminate in 1 or 2 shots, so keeping your crosshair on your opponent will not be your biggest priority. You will rarely run into any situation where you really have to track your opponent. And lastly, precision. So in Fortnite, precision is not too important, as the only weapon that you really care about precision with is a sniper, but snipers in Fortnite are weird because they take so long to travel. So you don't need to focus too much on precision for Fortnite, but it is still important to know, as it would be for any game. And next up in Warzone, it's still not super important, a little bit more important than Fortnite, but not your biggest concern. In Valorant though, precision is probably the thing you need to work the most on. As I said earlier, most weapons are a 1 to 2 shot kill. So a Vandal can one-shot kill, and a Phantom can in close range as well. I'm just giving examples for pretty diverse games, and they pretty much cover every single game out there. Alright, so now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to our next chapter. Put together a plan for your situation. Now, I'm sure there's people of all different skill levels and of all different goals watching this video right now. So I'm going to help you go ahead and put together a plan so that you can improve with aiming. You can't just rely on, oh, I'll do a little bit of practicing one day and then I'll magically be the best. If you're looking to take your aiming to the next level, you really need to have a daily plan together. So let's go ahead and go on to our first situation. Let's say you are almost pro or already professional, making money off of games, and really want to just take your aiming to the next level. Maybe that's the thing you're kind of lacking in. Maybe you're good with game sense, maybe you're good in Fortnite with building, but you'd like to really improve your aim. Here is my training session for you. Keep in mind this can easily be modified. It just kind of gives you an idea of how much you need to be doing. So for this 3-hour and 30-minute a day training session, go ahead, wake up and train for 45 minutes on overall tracking, flicking, and precision. Maybe if you're feeling weaker on precision than you are on flicking, work on precision a little longer during that 45 minutes, but you don't have any set boundaries. Then sometime before lunch, go ahead and work on your flicks for 30 minutes. Then after lunch, go ahead, work on tracking for 30 minutes. Then you're going to take a 2-hour break and work on precision for 30 minutes. So that gets you all 3 different categories. And then before dinner, go ahead and work on flicking and tracking for 15 minutes each. This will total up to 30 minutes. And then after dinner, go ahead, do a self-evaluation of 15 minutes in each category, and take notes every day on how you did. So that means you're just going to have to put together a quick 15-minute evaluation for tracking, flicking, and precision. That'll total up to 45 minutes, and then you're free for the day. So once again, that is for people who are extremely serious. That is probably not for the majority of you guys though. I would say the majority of you guys will probably be in the just trying to improve section, which is on later. So our next section is going to be on a heavy grind on the way to go pro. I would suggest training from 1 to 3 hours a day, and here's a 2-hour and 30-minute training schedule you might check out. So go ahead, wake up and work on overall aim for 30 minutes. Then work on flicks for 15 minutes and tracking for 15 minutes before lunch, totaling up to 30 minutes. Then go ahead and work on precision for 15 minutes after you eat lunch. That gives you a good enough time to take a break and refresh before you go back in. Then go ahead and do 30 minutes of overall aim training before dinner, and after dinner go ahead and do another 45-minute evaluation like I said earlier. And then of course go ahead and write down your scores on that evaluation. And now I would say the majority of you guys are in this section, which is just trying to overall improve. And here is a schedule for you guys to maybe check out that takes an hour and 15 minutes. So go ahead and wake up and train overall aim for 30 minutes. And then before lunch, go ahead for 15 minutes, work on either flicks, tracking, or precision, rotating what you work on by day. What I mean by that is Monday you would work on flicks, Tuesday you would work on tracking, and Wednesday you would work on that precision, and then repeat. So it rotates through each day. And then after dinner, go ahead and do a 30-minute self-evaluation. So now go ahead, take one of those plans, adjust it to your needs. Maybe you're on a heavy grind, but you don't quite have 2 hours and 30 minutes a day. Maybe bring that back to an hour and 30 minutes a day or so. Go ahead, adjust it, but try and keep the same sort of principles that are in that schedule. And you can also adjust the amount of time you work on things for the game that you're playing, as we talked about earlier. All right, so now we're on to our next chapter, which is using Kovaaks Aim Trainer. So why Kovaaks? Well, I personally have a ton of experience with it. I know a ton of pros use Kovaaks over other aim trainers, but there are still other options out there. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to be focusing on Kovaaks. So the first thing you're going to do when you launch Kovaaks is go into your settings and figure out what game you're playing and put in the proper settings for that game. Down here, there's a little tab that you can click on that actually lets you select your game, and it goes ahead and puts in your desired FOV and settings for that game. So for Fortnite, it's 80, and for Valorant, it's 103, and it does it with a ton of other games like Overwatch. Then you can go up here and match your sensitivity to the proper game. And then once you do that, you are ready to go with any course you want. And now that carries us over into chapter 6, which is understanding what different courses are trying to teach you. So this is a pretty easy topic to learn once you know all the different types of courses that Kovaaks has to offer, as it has hundreds if not thousands of courses for you guys to try out. So there's a ton of courses for each of the 3 categories I talked about earlier. Here are my personal favorites for each category. So if you're really trying to work on your flicks, go ahead and practice in Tile Frenzy, 1 Wall, 6 Targets TE, and Pat Target Switch. So what Tile Frenzy focuses on is it gets you kind of learning how to quickly switch from one target to another, flicking your crosshair over into a pretty large area to teach you the basics of flicking. Once you feel comfortable with that, I would go ahead and move on to 1 Wall, 6 Targets TE, as it's basically the same concept of Tile Frenzy, but with smaller targets, so you'll also have to make some micro adjustments if you over flick. This will be a much more accurate representation of what you would be facing in a real game. And then lastly, we have Pat Target Switch. So what this one teaches you is it teaches you how to flick to different targets, and it has headshot reward damage, so it teaches you to naturally flick for the head. It has a ton of different targets with a very little amount of health, so once you kill one, you can go ahead and flick to the other and keep your crosshair on it. If you also notice, these targets move a little bit, so you have to learn how to flick, and that goes into a tiny bit of tracking. And be sure to hit your shots or you will have a reload penalty. Next up, we have tracking. So for tracking, I would suggest doing Kata IC long strafes, Ascended Tracking 90, or Vertical Fast Strafes. So what Kata IC long strafes is I believe it's actually the one you load into when you first go into Kovaaks. It is just a basic moving target for you to try and keep your crosshair on that can go up and down a flight of stairs, so it's kind of a general way for you to learn how to track. Next up, we have Ascended Tracking 90. So this one teaches you how to track on different parts of your screen. It gives you 3 different levels to practice your tracking on because it will be a little bit different, and it also gives you a little more depth than the previous course, which is something you need to learn, how to track at different depths. And lastly, we have Vertical Fast Strafes, which is a pretty hard one to master. As you can see, I'm kind of struggling here on screen, but it teaches you how to do tracking up and down. For maybe if someone is like right above you and you need to track them as they jump off a roof or something, a situation like that. And next up we have precision. So my first recommendation to work on precision would be 1 wall, 6 targets, small. This gives you a huge wall with 6 different targets on it that are very small. This teaches you how to kind of flick over and then slow down your crosshair to get a very precise shot on your target. This is probably one of the best ones you can do, and if you're playing a game like Valorant where headshots really count, you need to grind like all day in this course, because it'll get you so much better so fast. Next up we have 1 wall, 5 targets, PASU. So what this course is teaching you is it's not only teaching you how to be very accurate, but it's also teaching you how to be accurate on a moving target, which is something you really need to learn for different games. Especially in games where headshots count, you sometimes need to hit a moving target in the head to make that headshot count. So by grinding this course, you will be so much better with that. And my third recommendation course for precision would be Pat Target Switch Small. Very similar to Pat Target Switch, except for the targets are smaller. So same sort of concept there with the flicking over and tracking, but you have to be pretty precise as the heads are a lot smaller and you don't want to run into that reload penalty like I said earlier. Alright guys, now on to chapter 7, which is continuing to improve. This is something I see so much. People spend a couple weeks grinding, I'm guilty of it myself, and then they just stop. They're like, okay, my aim's good where it is now, it's where I want it to be. Now I feel good, let's just start only playing video games again. While this is fine if you're a casual player, if you're really wanting to take your aim to the next level, or potentially go pro, or at least win money by playing games, you have to keep on grinding. You have to put yourself together a schedule, what you want to work on, similar to what I said earlier. Maybe you want to work on flicking and tracking for this amount of time in a day. Well, you need to put that on a schedule. You cannot stop working on aiming. It is something you lose over time without proper practice. If you keep on going into Kovaaks or any other aim trainer every single day, you're going to keep on improving and fly past all sorts of other players that are trying to do the same thing in game. Keep in mind, while playing a game does help you learn your sensitivity, aim trainers, especially Kovaaks, are made to specifically teach you how to aim, while a video game is not. If you notice in the targets that do headshot damage in Kovaaks, they have a red body and a white head. These are 2 very different contrasting colors, so it teaches you that you need to go to the higher end of the target because it's more rewarding. And by making it a different color, it's a lot easier to differentiate the head from the body. Plus there's a black background. They always try and combine really contrasting colors to help your brain learn faster than in a game like Fortnite or COD where the colors kind of start to blend in here and there. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, be sure to leave a like on this video. This has been a lot of work on my part, and I hope this does help you guys a ton. Also, if you're new, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you want me to do more videos, kind of longer, in-depth videos like this. It's a grind, but it's one I'm willing to take if you guys really enjoy this. So anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and as always, I'll see you next time.